All right, so we're diving in all these Goodreads reviews you guys left us for Emily Henry's funny story. Looks like you're trying to figure out if it really lives up to all the hype. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's always so interesting to see how people react to a really popular book.
yeah,
Some people just get swept away, and other people are like, wait, what?
exactly. For
Yeah.
those of you who haven't read it yet, it's your classic Emily Henry setup. Daphne, our main character, she gets dumped by her fiance, who then runs off with his childhood best friend. Ouch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to escape it all, she ends up in this charming little Michigan lake town,
Yeah.
sharing a house with, you guessed it, the ex-boyfriend of the best friend.
Oh, wow.
And then, of course, fake dating happens. What really stood out to me in these reviews is how many people just connected with Daphne.
Yeah, I think she's got this like vulnerability that I think a lot of readers find really relatable, like this fear of abandonment. You know, that comes from some childhood issues, like the challenges of making friends as an adult. It's all very real and human.
And Henry doesn't shy away from showing Daphne's anxieties, which I think reviewers really appreciated.
Oh, yeah.
She's a bookworm. She's a bit of an introvert. She works as a librarian. Like Cohen, she's practically made for Goodreads.
Right.
But it's Daphne's yearning for connection that really makes Miles, the love interest, so appealing to a lot of these readers.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting how Henry gives Miles his own past trauma to deal with. It kind of adds this like layer of complexity to his seemingly perfect boyfriend persona. He's not just like charming and good looking. He's got baggage and he's working through it in a healthy way. So it makes us question like the typical perfect boyfriend trope.
Totally.
Is it really about being flawless?
Right.
Or is it more about acknowledging your past and like actively working towards growth?
I love that.
Henry seems to be arguing for the latter.
Yeah, elevates the story beyond just this surface level romance. But speaking of the romance, this is where I think the reviews get really interesting.
Yeah.
Some readers found it intensely romantic.
Oh, yeah.
Swoon-worthy, even. They praised Henry's signature witty banter and the way she builds tension.
Yes, Henry is known for that sharp, witty dialogue. And you can really see it like shining through in this positive reviews. Yeah. But then there's this whole other group who felt like the chemistry between Daphne and Miles was lacking. Or that the pacing was too fast.
Interesting.
It seems like, you know, if you prefer a slow burn romance, this one might not be for you.
Right, and that makes me want...
Oh, but hold on. Before we even go there, let's talk about this one thing that really caught my eye.
What's that?
In these reviews.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
It's the moaning while eating detail that Henry uses to describe Daphne.
Okay, I have to admit that one threw me for a loop. Was it supposed to be sexy? Quirky, awkward? I'm not really sure.
Right. Yeah. Some reviewers found it endearing, while others were just confused. I think it's like Henry's attempt to add this like unique and memorable trait to Daphne.
Okay.
But for some readers, it backfired.
Interesting.
And it raises this interesting question about how authors try to create characters that are relatable but also memorable. Yeah. Did those quirky details always work?
Right.
Or do they sometimes cross the line into just being too weird or off-putting?
That's a great point. And it makes me wonder how much those little quirks actually contribute to our enjoyment of the story.
Totally.
But before we get too sidetracked, let's circle back to the romance for a sec.
Okay.
Do you think the mixed reactions to the pacing have anything to do with the way that Henry handles their individual growth alongside the relationship?
Oh, that's a really insightful observation.
Thanks.
It's not just about Daphne and Miles falling for each other.
Right.
It's about them figuring themselves out along the way.
Yeah.
And maybe for some readers, that journey felt rushed, like it needed more space to breathe.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
This ties into a bigger theme that reviewers highlighted, this idea of self-discovery, especially for those navigating their early 30s.
Yeah.
It's not about finding the one.
Right.
It's about finding yourself first.
Exactly.
And on that note, I think it's time we shift gears and...
Oh, wait, hold on.
Okay.
There's one more thing.
What's that?
We need to address before we move on.
Okay.
Remember that fudgies detail?
Oh, right. The tourists.
Yeah.
I'm dying to hear more about that.
Yeah.
It's these little details that make the setting come alive.
Absolutely. And speaking of the setting,
Yeah.
Henry chose to place Funny Story in a lakeside town, place known for its slower pace, close-knit community, all those details. Summer on Lake Michigan, charming small-town vibes, cherry farms, they all contribute to the overall feel of the novel. But what if she had placed these characters in like a bustling city instead?
Oh, interesting.
Would their choices, their relationships, even their journeys of self-discovery feel different to us?
Wow.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Would Daphne's anxieties be amplified in a more anonymous, fast-paced environment? Would Miles' laid-back charm be lost amidst all the hustle and bustle?
You're really making me think. I'm already picturing them navigating crowded subway platforms, trying to find a moment of quiet connection amidst the chaos.
Exactly. It's a totally different vibe. And that shift in setting could like completely change their relationship. So as you dive into Funny Story, I really want you to pay attention to how that setting informs the characters' choices and shapes the narrative as a whole.
I don't know about you, but I'm ready to pack my bags and head to a Michigan lake town. Even if it means I run into some fudgies along the way. But before we get too carried away, let's talk about another theme that resonated with a lot of the reviewers. And one that's close to my heart, chosen family and community.
Oh, yeah, the positive portrayal of female friendship. And the role it plays in Daphne's growth was something that a lot of reviewers mentioned. I think it speaks to like our deep-seated need as humans for connection and belonging. Especially when our romantic relationships let us down.
So true. And on that note, I think it's time we shift gears. And delve into those supporting characters.
Sounds good.
Particularly Daphne's friends and the role that they play in her journey of self-discovery. But before we do that, let's take a quick pause. And reflect on what we've learned so far. We've got a relatable protagonist struggling with real-life anxieties. We've got a seemingly perfect love interest who's actually dealing with his own past trauma. And we've got a romance that's sparking all these debates about pacing and chemistry. And let's not forget that moaning while eating detail, which is either a stroke of genius or a complete disaster, depending on who you ask. So what stands out to you so far? What are you most curious to explore further? We'll be right back to uncover even more insights from these Goodreads reviews.
You know, it's fascinating how those supporting characters, especially Daphne's female friends, really add like another layer of depth to the story. They highlight the importance of like chosen family. You know, those connections that we build outside of our romantic relationships. That offer support and a sense of belonging.
I think a lot of us, especially as we get older, realize how crucial those friendships really are. They're the ones who see us for who we truly are, flaws in Ollie. And it seems like Daphne's friends really challenge her to grow and evolve, which is something I always appreciate in a story.
Oh, for sure.
But I'm curious, did any of the reviews touch on how those friendships impact the romance between Daphne and Miles?
Yeah, actually, some reviewers felt that the strong female friendships were one of the most compelling parts of the novel. They appreciated how Daphne's friends offered a different perspective on her relationship with Miles. Sometimes even questioning whether he was truly right for her.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's not just blind support. It's honest, sometimes tough love.
Yeah, that's what real friends do, right?
Exactly. They call you out on your BS. Push you to be your best self.
And it adds a layer of realism to the story.
For sure.
You know, romantic relationships don't exist in a vacuum. They're influenced by the people around us. Especially our close friends. Now that we're talking about these different layers and perspectives, makes me think about some of the criticism that Miles received in the reviews. Some readers found him too perfect. Almost unrealistic.
There were a few who felt that he fell into that manic pixie dream boy trope. You know, where he exists solely to help Daphne find herself.
That's right. And it's a valid critique. You know, it's important for male characters in romantic comedies to have their own agency and complexity.
Totally. You want to root for a love interest who feels like a complete person.
Exactly.
Not just a projection of the protagonist's desires, but even with those criticisms, there were still tons of reviewers who just adored Miles.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think part of his appeal aside from the messy hair and tattoos, is that he represents a certain kind of emotional maturity that's often lacking in romantic comedies.
Right.
He's patient, he's understanding, which is incredibly attractive to readers, especially those who've been in relationships where those qualities were absent.
I get that. It's refreshing to see a male character who's in touch with his feelings.
Totally.
And willing to communicate openly.
And let's not forget that Miles is dealing with his own past trauma.
Right.
While some might see that as a way to make him more appealing.
Yeah.
I think it speaks to a larger trend in contemporary romance.
Where we're moving beyond those like surface level characters.
Yeah.
Readers want to see characters who are flawed, vulnerable, who've been through some difficult experiences and come out stronger on the other side.
It's like we're moving away from this idea that perfection equals happiness.
Right.
And embracing the messiness of life.
Obviously.
Which brings us back to Daphne.
Yeah.
And the criticism that she received from some reviewers.
They found her annoying, lacking self-awareness.
Okay.
And kind of prone to repeating the same relationship patterns.
I can see how that would be frustrating for some readers.
Yeah.
It's hard to root for a protagonist who keeps making the same mistakes.
Right.
But I wonder if that's also part of what makes her relatable. Like, haven't we all been there at some point? Making choices that we know aren't good for us, getting stuck in those unhealthy patterns.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
It's that struggle, that imperfection that makes us human.
Right.
And maybe for some readers, Daphne's journey is a reflection of their own.
You know, as we're talking about those relatable flaws, it brings to mind that whole moaning while she eats thing.
Oh, yeah.
I know we talked about it earlier, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around it.
Right.
Did any of the reviewers offer any insights into why Henry chose to include that particular quirk?
That's a good question. And to be honest, there wasn't a clear consensus in the reviews.
Okay.
Some found it endearing, quirky, even sexy. Others were just baffled.
Right.
I think it's just one of those details that's meant to be provocative.
Okay.
To spark conversation and debate.
Clearly it's succeeding.
And clearly it's working.
We're still talking about it.
Right.
It's those little details that get stuck in your head long after you've finished a book.
Yeah.
But it's not just the characters in the romance that make funny stories so captivating.
Right.
It's also the setting.
Oh, yeah.
We've got summer on Lake Michigan, cherry farms, quirky local bars. Those reviewers who were familiar with Michigan really seemed to appreciate the authenticity of the setting.
Yeah, and remember that debate about the term fudgies?
Yes.
That's like a perfect example of how a seemingly small detail can spark this larger conversation about regionalism, stereotypes, and even the power of language.
You know, now you mention it, there's something so evocative about that term fudgies.
Right.
It conjures up these images of tourists flocking to this charming lake town, eager to indulge in all the local treats. It's almost like a term of endearment.
Yeah.
Albeit a slightly teasing one.
I think it speaks to this larger theme of the novel, because there's this kind of clash between locals and tourists, the familiar and the unknown.
Right.
Daphne is an outsider.
Yeah.
She's navigating this new environment, trying to find her place amidst this established community.
Totally.
And in a way, she's also a fudgy.
Okay.
Someone who's come to this place seeking something.
Right.
Whether it's love adventure or a sense of belonging.
That's a brilliant observation, and it makes me think about the ending of the novel.
Yeah.
Do Daphne and Miles stay in that lake town? Or do they eventually return to the hustle and bustle of city life?
That's a great question, and I think, honestly, it's left open to interpretation.
Okay.
The beauty of Henry's writing is that she doesn't tie everything up in a neat little bow.
Right.
She leaves room for the reader to imagine what happens next.
Yeah.
To consider the possibilities.
And that's what makes for a truly engaging reading experience, right?
Absolutely.
You're not just passively consuming a story.
Right.
You're actively participating in it.
Right.
Filling in the gaps with your own imagination and experiences.
Exactly, and that's what we try to do here on the Deep Dive.
Yeah.
You know, we're not just summarizing the reviews, we're sparking a conversation, encouraging you to think critically about the story and its themes.
Right.
And ultimately, to connect it back to your own life.
Beautifully said. And on that note, I think it's time we wrap up our deep dive into Funny Story.
Okay.
But before we do, I want to leave you with one final thought. So we've talked a lot about the characters and the romance and the setting, even that moaning while eating detail.
Oh, yeah.
But at the end of the day, it really comes down to how you felt about this book.
Right.
Did you find yourself like swooning over Miles? Were you annoyed by Daphne's choices?
Yeah.
Did you find yourself craving a big slice of cherry fudge on the shores of Lake Michigan?
It's so interesting how one novel can just evoke such a range of emotions and reactions.
Totally.
I mean, that's the beauty of reading, isn't it?
Yeah.
We bring our own baggage to the page, our own experiences, our own biases.
Totally.
So I'm curious, what resonated with you in these reviews?
Yeah.
What sparked your curiosity?
Right.
What made you even want to pick up this book in the first place?
When I was reading through all these reviews, I was really struck by how many people mentioned the importance of chosen family and community.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about finding romantic love.
Right.
It's about finding those deep platonic connections that really ground us and support us through all of life's ups and downs.
Totally.
I'm curious, do those themes resonate with you at all?
Oh, absolutely.
Have you had experiences where, friendships have been just as important, if not more important, than romantic relationships?
That's such a powerful observation, and I think it speaks to this larger cultural shift.
Okay.
Where we're kind of redefining what it means to have a fulfilling life.
Right.
It's not just about, checking off boxes, marriage, kids, career.
Yeah.
It's about finding connection and purpose and a sense of belonging.
Totally.
And sometimes those things come from unexpected places.
Yeah.
Like a group of friends that become your chosen family.
Funny story really highlights that. Daphne's friends, they aren't just there to offer support and witty banter.
Right.
They really challenge her and push her to grow.
Yeah.
And help her become a better version of herself.
Totally. It's a good reminder that the people we surround ourselves with have a huge impact on who we are and who we become.
And sometimes those people aren't the ones we expect.
Right.
Think about Daphne's relationship with Miles's ex-girlfriend.
Exactly.
Not your typical rom-com setup.
Right.
But it's a reminder that even in unexpected places, we can find connection and support.
Yeah, and it makes me think about the ending of the book.
Okay.
Do you think Daphne finds what she's looking for?
Right.
Does she end up with Miles?
Yeah.
Or does she choose a different path?
Right.
Without giving anything away, I would love to hear your thoughts on how the story wraps up.
I think Emily Henry is so brilliant because she doesn't give us easy answers.
Right.
She leaves things open-ended.
Yeah.
And allows us as readers to kind of draw our own conclusions. And in a way that's so much more satisfying.
Totally.
Than just a neatly tied up ending.
Right.
Because it lets us keep talking about it.
Yeah.
And imagine what happens next for these characters.
It's like she's giving us permission to write our own epilogues.
And that's the magic of a good book. Right?
Absolutely.
It sticks with you long after you've finished reading it. It sparks your imagination.
Yeah.
Leaves you with those lingering questions.
I think that's what makes funny stories so interesting.
Yeah.
It's more than just a lighthearted rom-com. It's a story about self-discovery, the power of friendship, and the search for connection in a world that can sometimes feel so isolating.
And who knows, maybe it'll even inspire you to book that trip to a charming Michigan lake town.
Right.
Fudgies and all.
But before you do, we want to hear from you.
Right.
What stood out to you in these reviews?
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Daphne and Miles?
What about those infamous Crocs? Did they win you over?
Or were they a deal breaker?
We're always excited to keep the conversation going.
Yes.
So drop us a line, share your insights, and let us know what you thought of our deep dive into Funny Story.
Happy reading, everybody.